Hi guys, so just as follow-up for the review I did of the cold steel shillelagh and the other plastic shillelaghs. So there was a lot of discussions about these ones, and one thing that came up a little bit from that discussion, and which kind of leads us into another subject I wanted to talk about, is people were telling some of the comments basically, so in Entrambata, it's better to use light sticks, and you can't really use a stick like this. So if you find yourself with some of these, like if you're in a dark alley and somebody attacks you, and for some reason there's a cold steel shillelagh there on the ground, you're helpless, because you can't use it. So that's not quite the case, and what I want to explain a little bit here is how could we actually use some of the principles of Bhattarak and Entrambata to use a very large stick like this if we need to. So this leads me to another subject that comes back quite a lot, and it's how people tend to see what we do in Entrambata as a kind of a long distance style, where other styles like the Doyle method, which is a great style, equally good, but people tend to see us as kind of opposites, where we do all the fancy long distance stuff, and Doyle are kind of more in your face, close in. It's not really what we do in Entrim. Really, Entrambata is a lot more complex, a lot more polyvalent than people think. The reason is people think that we fight always from the distance is because when you're fighting somebody that's armed with a stick, it's a lot easier to fight from a distance than it is to break distance, and I'll get a little bit into that. But anyway, coming back to the cold steel shillelagh, like how could I use something like this in our style and still be effective? So I find myself with this, and like I was saying in the other videos, I could use it like this, but it's going to be slow, it's going to be really tiring, and not going to make a lot of sense. So one thing I can try to do is to use the stick in a bridge, like we would call it. So we have actually quite a few techniques for ankles, and one of the techniques we really like is called elbows. Elbows, because it's very close to an elbow strike you would see, for example, in MMA today. Right? So the logic is that I use my stick now as I would my elbow to strike. So we can use it from an outside strike or an inside, so striking with a bada or striking with a rar. So if we strike here from the outside, it would look a little bit like this. So very quick strike again, think elbow strike. You would see we're not trying to go through the person here, because then we're kind of exposing our back. So instead, we try to strike and come back. Strike and come back. And as you see, I still have quite a lot of power. Even though I'm not pushing through all the way, I can deal a lot of damage, even on somebody's face with something like this, or somebody's ribs or arm. It's still going to hurt quite a lot. And on the other side, I can also do this. So by sliding my hand across the stick here towards my main hand. So this is our reverse or inside elbow, right? So we do have these to strike close. We also have these hooves, cross checks, where we use the middle of the stick to strike against the person's head, their hands, any target that's reachable, so they find themselves in front of us. We use this standing strike to reach them. We also have techniques where we're going to thrust at the opponent. So we try to come from my head, for example, with a strike. Here, if I could block, come in with a bayonet. I could come on the opposite side with a pike, like this, and maybe follow up with an elbow, bang, like this. So I can do this with this stick. What I can also do, and you know, that video was saying, and the review was saying that these sticks are basically made to be used like baseball bats. And so if you find yourself with a stick like this, we do have two-handed techniques. We usually reserve them for situations where we are outnumbered. Right? So if I have many Andrews here around me, I'm not going to try and fight them one at a time like that. Doesn't make sense too much. So instead, I want to get out. I'm going to grab my stick two-handed, and I'm going to start swinging here around me or downward like this, right, to create that space. So if I have a heavy stick, I can use it two-handed like this and strike my opponent, right, come from the shoulder this way. So it is also a possibility to have a very heavy stick. Another thing I could do is use hooks like this, right? Because these are a lot more, lot larger kind of strikes, I can come in and actually control a little bit more of the stick and maybe even grab it here from the rod where the balance is a little bit more manageable. And I can strike at somebody's leg like this, come back into my guard and do enough damage. So this is one way of using that. And this leads me to say, and you know, Andrew, I don't know if you agree with me, but we were talking a little bit about this earlier on when we were doing sparring, but when we fight, like I was saying in the beginning, the reason why people don't see us in the sparring videos closing in so much is because it's a lot more dangerous to do that. If I'm fighting Andrew here, you know, and we're both on guard, we're both being careful, and we're both kind of expecting, especially with that big stick here he has, he's definitely going to want to keep me far. And so the problem here is to get in close. A lot of people will say, oh, it's easy. No, you just, you can just parry, and then you close in and grab his hand, bang, and go for the landing, bang, bang, bang. That's fine against an opponent that doesn't move, but against somebody that's dynamic and understands their range, that's a lot more complicated. Yes, I can try and crash in after a parry, but then he's going to quickly go back, fall back, recover the distance, and strike at me, right? Especially if I let go of my guard, if I strike, and then, so if you keep punching away at me, so if I go here and if I try to go down, come close, the problem is I gotta really charge in. That can work. I don't say that it's impossible, but again, somebody that's skilled and somebody that understands distance, it is very hard to do. And that's why we do it sometimes, but not so often. But it is a useful skill, and that's why we still have those techniques that we can use in those fights. I don't know that you agree with what I'm saying, and
I absolutely agree. Yeah. I mean, for me, with a longer stick, even if I have a shorter stick, you know, I still have a height advantage on it. And so I'm more likely to keep my distance, because why would I close in when I can strike safely? Yeah. But given the opportunity, if it were to arise, then yeah, I'd be able to come in and use some of the shorter range stuff. But that would be more of a secondary decision for me.
And like I often say in my classes, one of the disadvantages of fighting close, or infighting as we call it, is that I have to make sure that I can go in and I can really dominate my opponent from that range, right? So if I come in close here to Andrew, let's say I block the strike and come here, bang, bang, you know, I gotta hope that I am either able to drop Andrew very quickly with a strike, or that I'm such a better wrestler than he is that I can dominate the fight from this position. And because Andrew here is a lot more heavier, no
saving fat.
Yeah, no insult intended, but I'm a small guy, so it's going to be a lot more of a challenge for me to dominate somebody, even if they're not very skilled in wrestling at this range, than it would be to try and fight at a longer range. So yes, I can close in and do things, but at this point, it becomes an issue of, am I a good wrestler? Am I a good close fighter? And do I want to try this strategy against everyone, regardless of their size and their skill? I gotta have more tools in my box if I want to start fighting different kinds of opponents. And talking about smaller sticks, so I have a Kipini here. We can also use this in Entrambata. It's a little bit more challenging because we don't have as much surface to block with, right? So if Andrew was striking at me, I could still block with this the same way because I'm still using kind of the same area of the stick to block. And I have to expose a little bit more of my forearm at this point because I can't quite come all the way to cover it. Doesn't make quite a lot of sense. But this is still guarding within my forearm. Just going to be a little bit more careful. The advantage is, in this case, I am a lot more, I'm able a lot more to strike Andrew at a close range, right? So if I manage to, let's say, to block and grab Andrew's stick, I can actually strike him here with full power blows, where if I had a longer stick, and I was at the same distance, I would need to either step back a little bit, come in with a lark like that, or use other techniques. But with a shorter stick, I can really come close and do more varied strikes at that distance. So I think this is one of the reasons why people, especially in faction fights, would maybe favor smaller Kipinis like this. Because if I'm a big melee, and again, if I'm a good wrestler, and maybe I can get close to another guy, grab it by the lapel, grab the stick, and then from here again dominate the fight. Where if I'm not so confident, I prefer to fight from a longer distance. Maybe I would go for a longer stick. So my point basically, in Entrambata, you can use a vast array of stick. I can use 4-footers like the one Andrew had. I can use very large, very heavy sticks. I can use smaller sticks like the Kipini here. I can use more walking stick length, shillelaghs like that. I just have to be comfortable and able to adapt my fighting style to all these different sticks. But we have the techniques to fight from a long distance, with our hooks, with two-handed strikes, or mid-range distance with our more regular third grip style, or from infighting with our elbows, with bayonets. We have those techniques. And if you don't see it in videos, maybe because we don't do enough videos, but it's also because it's not necessarily that easy to use down in sparring. But we do train it. So, I think that's about all I wanted to say about this. Any words of wisdom for the end?
Not in particular. I think you covered most of the comments or concerns regarding cold steel and using it at certain distances and demonstrating the different lengths and weights of sticks and how it can be used. So
great. I think we're good. Well, thank you, Andrew. So basically, again, if there's people saying, "Oh, Entrambata, it's this, it's not that," it's a lot more complex than what you see in some of our videos. So I hope this little video was enough to explain some of the variety you can find in our style. I hope you liked it, and we'll try and do